When I first stepped into the world of investing, inflation was just a word I heard in the news, something distant, almost theoretical. It didn't feel personal. That changed the moment I opened my first account with broker Capital Trade Consulting PT Lenti. Suddenly, numbers weren't just numbers anymore. They were moving, shifting, reacting to something bigger than me. At first, inflation felt intimidating, prices rising, currencies fluctuating, uncertainty everywhere. But over time, I began to notice something unexpected. Inflation doesn't just create challenges, it also opens doors. It reshapes the landscape, quietly redirecting where opportunities lie. Reading a review Capital Trade Consulting PT Lenti, I remember seeing how other beginners described that same turning point, the moment when inflation stopped being bad news and started becoming a signal. That idea stayed with me. Instead of fearing it, I began watching it. One of the first things I learned through Forex Capital Trade Consulting PTE Leltied was how currencies respond to inflation differently. Some weaken, others strengthen, and those movements create space for strategy. It felt almost like learning a new language, one where central bank decisions and economic data formed the grammar. What surprised me most was how inflation made me more intentional. Before, I might have approached investing casually, almost experimentally. But rising prices pushed me to think, where does my money actually go? Is it growing or quietly losing value? Using ctcptltd.com, I started tracking patterns more closely, not obsessively, but with curiosity. Inflation wasn't just a headline anymore, it became part of my daily awareness, something I could actually respond to rather than just observe. There were moments of doubt, of course, times when the market felt unpredictable, almost emotional. But I noticed that those were also the moments when the biggest movements happened. And slowly, I stopped seeing volatility as something to avoid. Looking back at different perspectives, including a review ctcptltd.com, I realized how common that shift is. At some point, every investor has to move from reacting to understanding, and inflation often becomes that turning point. What I appreciate now is that inflation forces clarity. It doesn't allow passivity. It asks you, gently but persistently, to be present, to pay attention, to adapt. And that, in its own way, is empowering. Through my experience with Forex ctcptltd.com, I've learned that no economic condition is purely negative. Every shift carries both risk and potential. It just depends on how you choose to see it and how willing you are to learn. Today, inflation no longer feels like an external force acting on me. It feels like part of the rhythm of the market, something I move with, not against. And maybe that's the biggest transformation of all. My opinion, Capital Trade Consulting PT Ltd has naturally evolved along this journey. What started as a simple entry point into investing became a space where I could grow, question, and understand the market in a much deeper way. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: investment opportunities don't disappear in times of change. They simply transform. The key is learning to recognize them in their new form.